everybody. Today I'm going to be talking about the Titan of the Depths, Nautilus. So, first thing to know about Nautilus are his abilities. What does he do and why is he good at it? So, his first ability would be his passive. The first attack against the target deals increased physical damage and roots them briefly. Is about 0.8 seconds to 1.5 seconds at the end of his 18 levels, and it has a 100% AD ratio. So this means that every time he auto-attacks a champion, he can root them for a brief amount of time, and every new champion that he attacks after that, he will have refreshed root on them. And I believe it's about like a 10-second cooldown of when he can reroot his enemies. So it is possible to get more than one root during like an extended team fight with this ability. His next ability is his Q, which is the Dredge Line ability. This is where he hurls his anchor forward, collides with an enemy, dealing 70 to up to 250 damage plus a 90% AP, and it's a stun. It brings the two of them together, and that usually allows him to get his auto attack off, which will root the enemy as well. This deals magic damage as well, and it can be thrown into terrain itself and bring Nautilus himself towards the terrain instead. So this means that gives him a lot of mobility. Supposing that he doesn't want to engage on the champion with his Q, you can use it to escape power dives, you can use it to escape enemies. It just gives him a lot of mobility around the map, so long as he throws it correctly and gets the right angle on it, basically. So the next ability he has is the Titan's Wrath, which is basically a big shield that he gets, and it allows him to deal damage based on percent max health. It's 45 damage shield at the start, and last rank it's 85 shield. And he gains more shield based on his percent max health, specifically 9 and then 13 at the very max stat. And then while it persists, his attacks will deal 30 to 70 plus 20% AP damage over time to his target and surrounding enemies. And it can also be used as an auto attack reset. So this means that when he is dealing damage to enemies and in a team fight situation, he will be able to throw out his W to get an auto attack reset and then maybe damage all of the enemies in the surrounding area. This can also be used to help clear waves faster. So the next ability he has is the Riptide. So in this ability, Nautilus creates 3 exploding waves, dealing at the starting rank 55 up to 175 damage, plus a 30% AP ratio around himself. Each explosion damages and slows enemies for about 30% at the starting rank, up to 50%, decaying over 1.25 seconds. So this is a great ability for staying on top of enemies, usually used in conjunction with his root and his shield to just keep enemies nearby and just allow you to stick on them and allow your carries to avoid getting killed. It's a great ability if the enemies are paying you no attention, just to slow them down and stick on them so that your carries can kite back and that you'll have hopefully a more successful team fight than before. So his last ability is Depth Charge. So Nautilus will fire a shockwave into the earth that chases the opponent without fail. I'm pretty sure it can't be cleansed. And it deals 150 at the starting rank, up to 400 at the end, plus 80% AP ratio, so pretty big damage for one single ability. Probably a little bit less than the hook itself, but still a lot of damage. But mainly what you're using it for is the shockwave that rips up the earth and knocks enemies into the air. And it stuns them and knocks them airborne for 1 to 2 seconds at max rank. When it reaches the opponent, the shockwave erupts, knocking the target in air and stunning them, and it will do 125 up to 225 plus 40% AP to each subsequent non-target if it passes them in its path, basically, as you can see from that little animatic. So this means that if you are able to get in range of a carry and use this ability, and the other enemy team stack up behind or in front of the carry, it allows great CC and repositioning for your team, and basically allows the carry not to play the game while you guys can all move in and get the surround or whatever type of scenario you want for your team fight. And basically allows for either engage or disengage, basically, because of its usefulness and its inability to be interrupted, basically. So, after listening through a few of those, we can jump into some of his combos. Currently, a lot of his combos are not that fancy. They're just kind of follow-ups that you would probably already think of. Most of them are just ways to CC your enemy over and over again until they die, finally. So the first one, the most obvious one, it's just a Q into auto attack, which will usually automatically happen. You Q auto attack and it roots them. Then you can also use W if you have it leveled for an auto attack reset. And E, basically it's just like a great engage, and it's hard to kind of punish it with the slow at the end there. And with you autoing like constantly down on the enemy. So the second one, which might be just like a little bit better, depending on how ready your AD carry or whoever you're in an engagement with is just to simply flash onto an auto-attackable enemy and root them. And then once they're rooted and they can't escape, you just chain that into a stun with your hook, which is also a knock-up. And then you auto-attack and then reset with a W as well. Another great pick potential one, and one if you know you have an overextending enemy, is to just simply start out with your R. You can even flash R. But once he is knocked up into the air and he's about to land, you probably want to hook him so that there's no time for him to flash out or do anything special. Once he's hooked, you auto-attack him so he's rooted and he can't flash still. And then you do your W reset, or you could also E. If you E though, he probably can flash out if he has flash and doesn't want to die. So maybe it's better to get a reset on your W and maybe kill him there. It's up to you, really. Usually you want to have your W and your E be the kind of thing that you want to decide between, like, oh, is this going to be the difference of, like, if he gets away or not? Or can I just, like, mash him down and he's going to be fine if I just do an auto attack reset? And then there's the other iteration of that, which is where you just switch the Q and the R. So if you don't, usually it's better to just start with the R if you know you can kill the target and it's squishy. But if you maybe like are catching somebody out and they're a little bit too far for the R, you can always Q or flash Q in, and that's more of like a skill shot start one. But once you Q in, you R him and then you auto attack him, so make sure he's rooted. Generally in that one, if you do Q and then R, they'll be knocked up for the time that you're close to them, so you want to use your E in that period, or you could use your W there and then auto attack them once they've landed and the stun's gone. This can be just like, it's just like a little bit of min-maxing you can get out of that. But the general idea behind all the combos obviously is to be a CC bot, and whether that's engaging or peeling, basically. Because if your AD carry is, you know, maybe you're looking to push up into a vision and, you know, you get caught by an Evelyn on the side or something like that. Basically, you just want to make it so that your AD carry is feeling safe and that can pump damage, because realistically, you're just conjoined to whatever carry that you're with at this time. You don't really do a lot of damage on your own, and so really you don't want to be using these abilities to do anything unless your carry is with you. One of the more unique scenarios you could find yourself in is if one of your carries is overextended and the enemy is finding themselves able to pile in on top of them. So long as they're not CC'd and they're running away and it's just simply a chase, your R is a great disengage tool. And even on top of that, you might even walk up further so that they have you can get even more distance for your carry to get away, and then simply use your hook on terrain to get out of a given situation. So your hook is a great engage and disengage tool, and your ult is the same way. It's one of the unique aspects of Nautilus is that he has like great disengage and engage, and he works in like that dual purpose of helping your carry, so long as you know the plan beforehand or you're able to figure out on the fly extremely quickly. But you just have to know what the plan is, so that you're not using, like, for example, your R and then your Q, and then you realize that your carry kept running and you're probably dead if you're out there by yourself. So make sure that you have a plan in mind. Don't just use all of your abilities willy-nilly. Like, they're very important. It's a lot of CC and duration on them, so just keep that in mind if you're going to be using Nautilus, is that you don't have to always go in, and a lot of your abilities, even like his Riptide, his E, can be used for a slow to keep on people, or, you know, to just keep people away from your carry. So it's a great that's like his strength as a champion, is in his dual purposeness. here we go. We have the highest win rate build and the most common build. Now let's scroll down to the actual statistics for these. So the general overview shows us that in general, Aftershock is one of the most sought after runes. It's probably one of the highest win rates, with being the highest pick rates. This is just because Nautilus as a tank is extremely useful, and so extra stats for tankiness is really, really good. But it's only like single target stats for you, basically. So generally that's not too bad of a thing. You can take this rune in most cases. If you just want Aftershock for most team comps, it's going to work out. Even whatever the enemy is using, like Aftershock is generally like one of the best runes Nautilus can have, obviously showing that it has one of the highest win rates with one of the highest pick rates. So that's a good indication of that rune just being overall like one of the best for the champion. Obviously the only one above that with a reasonable amount of playtime on it is Glacial, and maybe I guess you could argue Guardian, although I would just think that Aftershock might be better because you don't have to rely on your teammate being next to you, because Nautilus has a lot of repositioning tools. For Glacial, this seems like, from what I've read about it, I haven't even tried it myself technically, but it's more peel or assassin oriented. So it makes you less tanky itself, but if assassins are going for anyone on your team, it's probably not going to be you, and so having freeze rays that emanate them that continue to slow them, and more damage from your carries or whoever else is with you during a fight. It's just in general, it seems like a better way of dealing with enemy assassins or enemy bruisers coming onto your carries. Basically, it's a more situational rune itself. However, it offers probably a slightly stronger ability to deal with assassins or like bruisers that just run your entire team down. So pretty good in that way. I'll have to experiment with it myself because I haven't played Nautilus with it a lot. I'm generally picking Aftershock, the same set of rune pages. For mine, I follow this set of rune pages simply because they have a decently high win rate, and they are like, there's nothing bad in these runes. Basically, they're generally good. I could make cases for where other runes are maybe good as well, but these are picked the most, and they have maybe not the highest win rate, but close to the highest. Obviously, Nautilus is played in a lot of different ways, but showing these are all very similar win rates show that like Nautilus can be played in a variety of ways depending on what you want to eke out or maximize during your playtime with him. Yeah, so basically, this rune setup is one of the best for getting damage on your shield bash. This is great for if you're going locket as well. It synergizes with that shield, and it synergizes with your W shield with your auto attack resets every time you hit somebody. So it's not even that bad, and also scales with bonus health just like your shield does. So, I mean, that's great for Nautilus, especially if you're building Knight's Vow, stuff like that, for additional tankiness with your carries. Although Fawn of Life I've seen taken as well several times. A lot less is Demolish, but if you have an easier lane, it might just be worth taking Demolish to help your AD carry power down the turret to maybe give you more time in a different area. This should probably only really be used where you know you're going to get a lot of kills and you know that you want to snowball earlier. Fawn of Life is great for just general sustain. I mean, this seems like it would be taken more in like a scenario where you know that your team can be on top of the enemy, maybe more often. But I would generally, I mean, Shield Bash, you know that you're getting value out of, and you're getting free stats for it, 1 to 10 armor, magic resist, pretty good with your shield, because you're getting it on an 8-second cooldown usually anyway, if not less. I guess it's 12, but you're getting a lot of ability haste in other places too. So, I mean, Shield Bash is just generally like a great ability, and it's even the highest win rate of the green tree here in these three. So that's usually what I go with. Although it could be worthwhile to think about one of these two if the situation arises, obviously. Bone Plating is great for not taking any poke before you're setting up an engage. Obviously, this is most useful, what I think of, is right before your level 2 when you have to bash down the minions and you know that the enemy can poke you out. Especially against double range, something like that. It might be hard to, not take a lot of poke, obviously. but something like bone plating can help you there. And it generally just like helps you avoid burst, and yeah, it's a great rune for that. I'm seeing here that this is taken a lot less often, but second wind can be pretty good if you're staying in lane a lot. Um, and it can be great against pokier comps, like if you know that they're going to be a poke comp or a double range bot, it might be worthwhile to take second wind, as a double range comp can poke down your bone plating, obviously. Conditioning is okay. I don't know. Just doesn't seem as good as either one of these, but it could be good, I guess. I don't know. It seems more like a scaling rune than anything else. And Nautilus really, I feel like you shouldn't be playing him as a scaler. All right, let's go down the next green one. Unflinching, generally great to have a little bit of tenacity, especially in slow resist. If you're not going Swifties, slow resist is great. Tenacity is always good. And it goes up based on missing health because you're going to be engaging and probably going to be the one CC'd when you're engaging. Great to just have this rune and, you know, be able to maybe get out alive with your Q and stuff like that. It's just generally better than these two, I'm pretty sure. Revitalize doesn't really, you'd have to, like, it doesn't get as much value as you'd think with your shield. It's only 5% extra for shields, and you're only getting a 45 shield. So 5% of that is like, what, two extra shield hit points? Just not great. Generally you're not healing yourself. So just not great. Revitalize. Overgrowth is okay. It definitely works on your shield with your W, and it can also work, I guess, in that way that helps shield bash. So not terrible, but generally tenacity is pretty freaking good, so go with tenacity. Let's switch over before we go over the secondary runes to the highest win rate here. Like I was talking about earlier, Glacial is great at peeling off assassins, peeling off like hard engage, like bruiser types. It's just great for like, you know, peeling them off and then letting your carry like take care of them. Basically, it just does a lot of damage, and it slows them down a lot, and it just provides a lot of good CC. Nautilus is all about CC, so this sort of thing is great. You just have to make sure you're tanky enough, or that like they're not focusing you in a team fight enough that it's gonna work out for you, basically. And then of these other ones, this can also be applied to Nautilus' secondary, because in his most picked, he often goes for inspiration because it's a great tree. It looks like in this scenario, it's pretty much a toss-up what you want. Generally, Magical Footwear is going to be bad because as a support, you want to be roaming around the map, so generally wouldn't go with that, although it looks like the win rate is totally fine on it. Not sure why. But looks like Stopwatch can be good as well, but I would generally like think that Hextech Flash is just going to be great just because Nautilus loves going for those flash plays in general. So adding a Hextech Flash to have that on cooldown every 13 seconds or so, 13 to 20 seconds or whatever it is just like, it's like a great tool, basically. It just gives you more mobility, you can go over walls, gives you a lot of like passive move ability that you wouldn't maybe have before, and can set up a lot of good plays. Although generally I tend to go with Biscuits and Cosmic Insight. This can be explained obviously by Biscuits just being great in lane. Just stomp your lane, keep an enemy in lane as long as you can, and then, you know, keep your abilities off cooldown for the early skirmishes where you're really going to want the mana itself. And I believe it also gives you a permanent increase in your mana cap. Yeah. So it's just like a great rune, like obviously for any engaged type support or any support that just wants to sustain in lane for a long time. Futures Market can't really see that being all that good on Nautilus, although the win rates says it's all right. Minion Dematerializer, it says it's even better. Obviously less of a sample size there, but not sure why that is. I don't think that would ever, it kind of seems troll to me, but yeah, I don't know, maybe for cannons, so you get proc your Relic Shield and you can like clear them faster during like specific moments. I'm not sure. I don't know why that's such a high win rate. Maybe it's when you're playing Nautilus top or something like that. Although this is filtered just for support. Anyway, something that was interesting to me that I found was that the Approach Velocity rune has a much higher win rate. Although obviously, like 1/10 of the games played. This makes a lot of sense with your R though, and Andrew Q and E and stuff like that. It just makes a lot of sense sticking on an enemy. It's kind of what Nautilus wants to do. Although Cosmic Insight is probably just like the best because of your active items as a support, and your Flash and Ignite being so useful for utility during a team fight, basically. Time Warp Tonic seems alright as well. I've seen a lot of different websites saying Time Warp Tonic is maybe even a better rune than Cosmic Insight. This is obviously because of the huge heal you would get from Biscuit Potion if you were to do it and engage, and then baiting the enemy forward and stuff like that. So I can see why at a higher elo, or, much higher elos, it seems like it would be a better rune. I can see myself experimenting with that in the future, and obviously experimenting more with Hextech Flash Traption, obviously, as well. Don't think I'm going to be trying these two out, the boots or the dematerializer. And I guess we'll go into back into the highest win rate. So in this case, you probably want Font of Life just for as much healing you can get as possible, since you know that the enemies aren't going to be on you. Shield Bash, I mean, it still has a decent win rate as a secondary, but I'm not really sure why that's so much higher of a win rate than this one. Either way, I would think that these two are kind of your bread and butter, what you want to be doing. Obviously, there's conditional things like Demolish, or if you want to go with the Glacial, and then Hextech Flash Traption. Maybe Approach Velocity, I could see myself trying them potentially. Or Time Warp Tonic could be great. Maybe Perfect Timing for baiting and stuff like that. And then obviously, there's a little bit of experimentation to be done with Second Wind, potentially. But basically, those runes are like the stock standard and what you want to be doing. And next we'll look at build paths on Nautilus. The general most winning, or most played and highest win rate because of that build is the Locket of the Iron Solari. It's just great. It gives your teammates 2 armor and magic resistance passively. It gives you 5 armor and magic resist per extra additional legendary item. And it gives you great stats, 30 armor, 30 meter magic resist, and bonus health. It's great on Nautilus, and ability haste, just all great stats that you really want to have. It's very cheap, and it just goes to show you like how much it wins with it. Something that I didn't know, additionally to the Glacial Augment, is the Evan Shroud item. This one actually could be great in long team fights or 5v5 team fights, even better than the Solari, just because, well, this would give you around, what is that, 5,000? This is about 1,000, 1,000 shield at the first level, and then up to 385 at the max level, which would be around 2,000 health, 2,000 health extra in a team fight. It could be great, so long as you're using it at a very important burst time for the enemy. But Evan Shroud, for 4 seconds instead of just 2.5, and decaying, this gives it over a decaying period. Whereas this one is on, I don't even know, what is the cooldown for this? It doesn't even say. But this one gives a debuff to all enemy champions for 9% of their, they take increased health. Basically, like a total, it's like a total damage or a resistance shred of like the enemies, basically. While also giving the same sorts of stats. Oh wait, no. So I was a little bit mistaken earlier. This armor and magic resist is given to your teammates nearby, and you get two armor and magic resist to each other legendary item. Whereas this one gives you 5 to each other item. So this one gets you a little bit tankier per item gained. Same stats overall, but it also allows the enemy to be shredded down a lot more quickly. So potentially, Evan Shroud is even better than this Locket in straight up 5v5s where there aren't a lot of assassins. So I could see going something like Evan Shroud and Aftershock being one of the best tankiest builds, whereas you're staying in the middle of the team fight a lot longer. While something like Glacial Augment and Locket being great against, or better at least, against something like a double assassin comp by the enemy. So something that I should probably put to the test. I haven't really tried Evan Shroud or Glacial, but now I know their strengths and weaknesses, theoretically at least, where I know that Locket is always good in most situations, and Aftershock is good in most situations as well. But it's always good to experiment and try new stuff out, so I should get on Evan Shroud and Glacial as well. As for what I'm going to build first, obviously going to be boots. As an engaged support, affecting the map earlier and being able to roam is always better, at least the snowballing conditions. Mobies and Swifties, not too much of a difference in terms of movement speed gained. Obviously the Mobies are a lot faster, but the Swifties provide additional slow resist, so it can be a decision of like whether I'm going to be running around the map a lot more often, or I'm still going to be in my lane and coming up to mid lane every so often might affect my decision there. And then obviously there are also choices between Mercury Treads and the plated steel caps. This is more like a laner centric type boot purchase, although it doesn't have to be like dissuading me from going up to different lanes and affecting them. Generally, I feel like I'm a lot stronger in my lane when I build steel caps or Mercury Treads specifically for my lane. And Mobies are a lot better for affecting the map and leading to better outcomes around the map there. So potentially how I'm going to be playing is going to be dictated by my boots, which it shows by the data that boots are purchased, like full boots are purchased mostly around 9 to 12 minutes, 9 to 13 maybe. If you're getting Mercury Treads, they're a lot more expensive. But basically, it also shows that like when you're ahead, mobility is a bit better. But if you're a little bit behind, plated steel caps and Merc Treads can be great at shoring up and building defenses rather than taking your tempo and leading it and using it in different places, basically. So the last mythic that I wanted to go over was Shirelia's. This can be very good for engagement. It gives you move speed instead, which is a lot harder to calculate in game. I think I heard a stat one time that 5% move speed correlates to 1% win rate increase, something like that. So 30% move speed for 4 seconds. I mean, I don't know how to calculate that really, but obviously all the ratios are there. It just looks like it can be conditionally good if you're already winning, probably. This is that sort of item, and it can just help you get hooks or start up your pick potential with your R a lot earlier, potentially. So it's just like a viable option. Really not built that often, but it's just always there for like if you know that you're strong and you have a strong, really fed carry, just get them on top of people and kill them, basically. And it can also be used for disengage as well. So great for that dual purpose. As for the rest of these items, not too much to say. Knight's Vow is great for assassins. It redirects damage to you, and it gives you some damage reduction. Zeke's Convergence is for adding more damage on top, so could be better for straight up team fights. Zeke's is better, and Knight's Vow is a lot better for sneaky guys in the bushes. Obviously Thornmail based on bruisers and stuff like that can be a lot better, so I generally tend to avoid Thornmail early, just because I like Zeke's and Knight's Vow because of their cost. And then I also have heard, I think, Anathema's, is also decent in a lot of different situations. It looks like Force of Nature also provides a lot. But as soon as you can also get it, the Watchful Wardstone is a massively powerful item. Obviously want to get that. Situationally, Anathemas, Force of Nature, Randuin's can be good. Redemption looks very good sometimes, but it looks like those are all very situational items. So generally, I probably won't have any opinions on those until I try them out myself, which I have not. Now we're going to be moving into Playstyles. So Nautilus is one of the most premier engaged supports in League of Legends. That means that I can't ever sit back with him and wait. Not really an option, as I'm not really the best scaling champ. Kind of need my champions to be scaling faster than the enemies, and so I'm the CC to make that happen. This means that I have to get specific about the decisions that I'm going to make and the style that I want to be playing as soon as I possibly can. If I get a kill in lane early, if we take some bad trades early, this will affect which boots I can get, and that'll affect in turn what I'm going to be doing on the map and how I'm going to be thinking about the game and what we want to be doing about it. Oftentimes, that even we saw in the data for the earlier section that the type of boots you get is dictated by the amount of money that you have at the time, and it seems like oftentimes when players have more money, that 1100 gold for Mobies, they'll go for it and it'll affect the map in better ways, as we saw by the higher win rate. although this could be a false conclusion or a correlation that potentially there's another reason for, as they're already winning the game. It just seems to be the case that should I have an early advantage, I should try to press that in whatever way I can. Usually when I'm playing with Sam or playing to the lane where I know a laner is strong, I'll try to buy boots that will reflect that and stay in my lane. But all of that is just to say that boots make a large contributing factor to how much the support is going to be affecting other lanes themselves and what advantages of the press. So going into more detail about Nautilus specifically himself instead of just his boots, the main playstyle with him is just simply walking forward and hooking champions, and when that fails me, obviously the ultimate can't fail, as we know. And then another playstyle that emerges as the game goes on is the style of peeling off enemies for your fed carries. This is a much more consistent playstyle. So obviously playing to engage and to get on top of people is great, but if you don't have the damage, it might just be better to wait for the enemies to come to you and then, disrupt whatever plans they have. So it's basically a difference between reactionary and proactive versus reactive gameplay. I think earlier in the game, proactive gameplay is better until you can establish some lead somewhere on the map, and then playing reactively to thwart the enemy obviously seems to get better and better as the game goes on. Obviously, I would still not put it up out of my playstyle to be an engage later in the game, as I have a lot of distance I can cover with my hook and a lot of ability, especially if I take Flash, Hex Flash or something to that nature, getting on top of enemies who are out of position and creating player differentials in any area of the map is always good. But if we're at a general lull state, I'll play towards peeling carries and just being where I need to be to create a defensive zone anywhere on the map. So basically, it's either peel or to engage. And I would say primarily in a 5v5 team fight, my job is primarily to peel for the most fed member and secondarily create as much disruption with my CC as possible once I know that my carry is going to be safe for the majority of the team fight and can spam as much damage as he possibly can. In the laning phase, my goal is to decide whether I'm leaving my carry or whether the correct play is stomping my lane and then peeling for him later. I tend towards leaning towards the option of staying so long as we're getting an advantage in lane. However, if that's not the case, letting him farm and visiting other more successful lanes, especially if we're getting more and more behind or maybe even just staying even, it might just be more preferable in that case, playing with my jungle or playing with my mid laner or even top laner as possible, until I can kind of get a gauge on whether we're winning objectives and how strong we are, and I can adjust my play to be more peeling towards that sort of player, depending on how well each other part is going. But there are going to be obviously some games where I'm just going to be useless because all of my teammates are useless. So in that sort of game, it kind of sucks the most, but those aren't going to be the majority of the games, I'm pretty sure. Oh, okay. And then the last playstyle is obviously the one I haven't talked about, is Stomping Lane. So this one really kind of relies on wave states, obviously, and trading in lane and making sure that extended trades are possible for me, or dives are an available option. Basically, if Stomping Lane is an option, using my R to start a dive on a lone carry, or an overextended support even, can be a great option. Using flashes to engage to make sure the enemy's caught off guard. And then leaving the possibility of hooking terrain on a dive could be a great option, and getting away from junglers, obviously. Those are great options to contribute positively towards, stomping the lane while not dying and feeding the laner. And honestly, Nautilus does a lot of damage early, so doing it as early as possible is great for the lane, and if it doesn't work out, obviously the decision is made for me of whether I'm going to stick around or, visit more lanes if I can find an advantage somewhere there. Basically, most of the dive attempts should be successful given the right conditions when playing with a jungler who knows what they're doing. And even without a jungler who knows what they're doing, a lot of dives can be successful as long as it's 2v1 with Nautilus and his ult and Ignite. It's going to be a kill. It's just too easy to start off with an ult, maybe auto him once so he's locked down in E, and then just Q out. It's just too easy to do and too especially if the laner is alone and maybe the other support is roamed or on an off-timed reset. It'll just be too easy to pull that sort of thing off. And so looking for that and making sure I'm aware of those options is always great. And then trying to allow the AD carry to freeze the minion wave on our side of the map obviously creates huge advantages for me, where I can hook in or even flash in, hook in, and just start a fight whenever I need to. And there's all plenty of lane to run down, where the enemy is not going to have a great advantage with their minion wave. Like, that's just what I want most of the time. And if it's not that, then I want to be building a huge wave and hooking anybody that comes near the wave, or diving once it gets in, basically. So just creating like a space where the enemy cannot even like farm or gather experience. That's any tank support's bread and butter. So when I'm ahead, just threatening all the time and just being in lane and like able to, create the largest disadvantage possible for the enemy. Obviously roaming is great when that fails, and it's better to know that earlier on, because Nautilus as a CC bot can create a differential in any lane, just like a lot of jungles. And so once I'm level 3 and I have my Mobies, I might just be gone, if it was possible. All right, so key matchups now. So in bot lane, there are basically 3 types of matchups, maybe 4, but usually they're dependent on the support that the enemy is working with, and usually it'll be the hardest when the enemy is maximizing their type of archetype in rock paper scissors of tank, poke, or like sustain, basically. So the fragile poke lane types are the best to get a hook on these champs. Like, these are the best to be finding like precise timings where there's a gap in the enemy's availability to keep us poked or keep us under tower. Obviously, for these sorts of matchups, we probably don't want to be sitting under our tower, because it gives us a lot of space to work with and dodge poke. And it leads to us suffering if an engage is possible ever. So getting an early advantage in these types of lanes, where maybe we're setting up a cheese where we can poke the enemy down, so they're less inclined to make this sort of extended trades, and they want to stay away from our poke because they're the friend from a flash hook or something like that, is the best case scenario. And then keeping it on our side of the map and threatening whenever they come close to engage on them. That's the sort of lane state we probably want. And these are great types of lanes to dive as well. So if I can find an advantage in these types of lane, obviously I want to exploit this to the maximum. But if I don't find an advantage in this sorts of lanes, it's kind of the hardest for me, because usually in that type of lane, my carry is going to die a lot of the time under tower, especially if I'm not there, as there will be only one target to hit, and they still want to farm as much CS as possible. So this kind of is like the worst type of lane for Nautilus, especially as the game goes on, basically. But it can be countered so long as I am creating pressure somewhere else on the map and looking for plays there. The next type of matchup would be the more tanky engage type supports, just like Nautilus. So facing a Leona, Maokai, something that Alistar, not Swain, but anything that kind of wants to engage and stick on top of you and deal damage and allow their carry to be hitting. These are kind of even, and I mean, it's really up to the enemy what they want to do in that scenario, because I would say roaming and leaving this type of lane is probably going to be the go-to solution for these types of lanes. If our carry can avoid dives and has self-heal, something like an Ezreal, that's the ideal in that sort of lane, where I'll be able to move around the map and create engagements somewhere there or otherwise. But if I can't do that, it's kind of a waste of my time to be sitting under the tower anyway. So that's one of the... It's not hard, but it's more like you just have to make your decision and stick to it as much as possible and hope that your carrier, whoever you're playing with, is good enough not to die from a dive, or that you're there to help them when that could be possible. So that one is more macro oriented and more like it should be dictated more about like what I can do while I have free time. And then there's the last one, which is the sustain type of lane. This one's rough. only if I can't create any presence in it. So if you're facing something like a Sona or a Nami or a Soraka, getting a hook on top of them and then killing them instantly is one of the best things you could do, because just putting behind early is just going to make them suffer for the whole game. And it's really not that much of a threat compared to some poke lanes like Lux or Morgana or Brand or something like that. It's really not as dangerous for you to be going in on these types of champs and just like creating a deficit for them as early as possible. So these are the more like, it can be very good for Nautilus, and these might be the easier types of matchups where you would go something like Aftershock and just kill your laners over and over again, kill the tower, and then, you know, get onto the map and start to spread your influence and snowball everywhere. Then there are like a certain subset of champions that don't really fit either, but kind of mix a few. I think the hardest for Nautilus in general is champs like Braum, not Braum, more like Taric and Rel, which have great counter engage and a lot of peel. And like even Leona is arguably in this sort of like area. It's just like the ones that are that buff their teammates, and you know, it would be maybe some like types of matchup where you'd probably go Aftershock, or not Aftershock, Glacial Augment instead of Aftershock, simply because winning those are kind of just going to be harder without like a specific advantage where you're making the enemies weaker so that your AD carry can kill them. Because usually in those sorts of matchups, you're not the focus of an engagement. You're not going to be the one that's being kited out, and your AD carry is going to be jumped on as soon as they start going into that fight there. So those ones, you know, maybe more experimentation needs to be done by me, but those are kind of like the ones with the least amount of like interactivity, and leaving lane, you know, obviously might be the best type of action that you could go during that sort of matchup. All right, just to round it out, I'll just be summarizing the win facilitation for Nautilus. So obviously Nautilus is best when running at an enemy while your carries are as safe as possible. He suffers the most from disjointed team fights and engages, where assassins can pick off his buddies one by one. He himself is one of the best counters to these types of champions, but coordination on engagements and preparation is key for this winning strategy. His ability to create nearly guaranteed pickoffs with his ult and a follow-up is one of the most unique parts of the kit, and why he might be one of the more useful his ability to create nearly guaranteed picks off of his ult and follow-up is one of the most unique parts of his kit, and why he might be more useful in certain situations than something like Liana or Alistar. He's certainly not a champion that can do all of this on his own, so communication and awareness are strengths in facilitating his own strengths. A good Nautilus player should know his strengths as well as his enemies in order to stop their plans and create his own plays with his teammates, just like any other CC tank champion. All right, just want to finish off by saying thanks to you guys for watching, if you guys have, and I learned a lot putting this together, specifically about some runes and matchups and items, and what I could be doing, thinking about the game a little bit more, because I really haven't even thought about runes like Glacial Augment. Even though it had the highest win rate, I didn't realize how much of a game changer it could be in a certain matchup, and I'm eager to start testing out whether that is actually the case, whether I can, you know, create a difference in these games where I feel like, you know, it might not be the easiest thing to shred the enemy team down in a 5v5 fight if we don't have damage or something like that. But with some new ideas in mind, I'm gonna get back out there and start climbing. So thanks guys, peace out.